Hello, everyone. Sorry for this little delay. I hope you're all doing well. We thank you all for joining us for this webinar today on customer lifetime value. This is a great topic, a large one, and also very hot one, obviously, in marketing. And we wanted to thank you all for joining us today because you're very numerous. We have people from the US, good morning, from Canada, from Dubai, the UAE, from the UK, Germany, Spain, Switzerland, Belgium, and even France. So it's a great satisfaction for us, and we hope that this will again bring some value to you. And at the very core of marketing, as you know, we have this exchange of value, the value of a customer for the firm versus the value of a product for the customer. And so today, with two of our main experts, Dorothée and Lucy May. Hello, both of you.
Hello, Thibaut.
Hi. Today, we've decided to address this topic. We have previously covered in our previous marketing reboots brand value. We talked also about service value, sometimes product value. And so now, at last, we're going to look at the value of customers. So first of all, this notion of value of customers is not new. This is a historical concern. It has a heritage of direct marketing and all the work of on marketing, which is based on data from mail order firms, book clubs, for instance, and all the companies which sell direct, in fact, and can, as a consequence, record individual transactions. Basically, we're talking about the ancestors of Amazon. So this idea that consumer purchases can and should be pulled together to compute an individual value, an individual purchase value of a customer, this idea then gradually came to different contexts, to service contexts with contractual relationships. So banks, you can think of insurance, you can think of mobile phone operators. And then also to discrete transaction contexts. So the ones with no contracts, like airlines, for instance, or retailers, because of loyalty programs. If you don't have a program, obviously, to pull together all the transactions, then it's going to be difficult for you to measure any kind of customer lifetime value. And according to Peppers and Rogers, our famous consultants or marketing researchers who never really know, something in between, in their famous one-to-one future in 1993, which you can see on this slide, they explained that because consumers do have different monetary values, they also should get a different one-to-one differentiated marketing treatment. So Dorothée, this notion of customer lifetime value has become so critical that it has even become a competitive advantage for some companies.
Absolutely. Thank you, Thibaut. Even if the concept of customer value is quite old, the idea that a customer value become a competitive advantage is quite recent. It's been about 20 years. For a long time, the competitive advantage has been in product innovation, quality management, or internal processes. The most quoted article in the world with customer and value as keyword is the Woodruff article from 1997, which suggests that the value that a customer perceives is a new competitive advantage. So the value is then shared, the customer perceives the value and generates revenue to the company in the long term. So there are three complementary schools that are interested in this customer lifetime value. The first school models the consumer. It focuses on the customer as individual. Marketing researchers of this school are called measurer, and among them is Peter Fader, whom we will develop later. The second school is the school of brand modeler. So here we are at the brand level. It's more at an aggregated level. Marketing researchers from this school include Ehrenberg and the famous Byron Sharp. And finally, there is the third school that model the uplift. They measure the impact on how the customer value is increased. They are particularly interested in incrementality and on what we call the uplift. They try to reconcile the short term with the long term. So researchers like Radcliffe and Harry Kashner are part of this school. So today we are going to explore the three schools explaining customer lifetime value in three different ways and through its different facets. So let's start with the first one at the individual level. Thibaut, can you tell us how we model the individual value of a customer?
Yes, thank you, Doro. Actually, the first step towards customer lifetime value is to focus on customer centricity. If you take Peter Fader from Wharton, who said not all customers are created equal, he actually explains that because all customers are different in value, the key question is to identify this heterogeneity of customers. So there is not one consumer. There is not one single customer. It doesn't exist. There are multiple heterogeneous customers. And as a marketer, you want to identify those people. And especially, you want to identify the profitable ones, of course, who are responsible for the long term profitability of a company. Even if it means maybe sometimes to abandon unprofitable customers, those killer customers that Larry Zeldin highlighted in his famous book as well. So the question then becomes how to measure customer lifetime value. And it can be past or it can be future. We have basically two main methods to measure customer lifetime value. The first one is based on past data. So we're looking at small, medium, large customer segmentation. We're looking at models which are well known, such as RFM, recency frequency monetary, which are three discriminating variables of the value of a customer. And so you then have a second type of approach, a second type of modeling the customer lifetime value, which is based on predictions, right? So we're talking about CLV or LTV types of model. Basically here, we will consider the customer as a stream of future revenues. So a customer becomes a financial asset, so to speak, and we're going to compute all the cash flows that might happen and arrive from that specific customer over the years, and we will, of course, discount them to calculate, to compute a net present value of the cash flows of that customer. So this family of models, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is the customer lifetime value model. So Lucy May, can you maybe describe a little bit what are the benefits of CLV?
Yes, thank you, Thibaut. So calculating customer lifetime value has three benefits: identifying, defining, and targeting. So first of all, identifying non-profitable customers versus your best customers, your profitable customers. In other words, customer lifetime value allows you to acquire and retain the right customers based on profitability, not just based on acquisition or retention costs. The second one is defining resource allocation in a reliable manner. The benefit is it allows you to allocate the right resources depending on your marketing goal, whether it's acquisition, retention, or a win-back goal. CLV helps you do that. And then the last one, finally, targeting marketing actions towards customers with a high lifetime value to maximize the efficiency of investments. Using customer lifetime value allows you to reduce marketing expenses and increase performances. Now, Thibaut, I think you have an illustration to show the progress that was made over the past years in customer lifetime value.
Yes, Absolutely. If you go back 50 years ago or 60 years ago, and you look at a plane, you're going to see here some customers maybe with a weak customer value, and some others with a stronger customer lifetime value. But guess what? They're all sitting in the same cabin. So the reason why some are strong, some are weak is because some fly more often than the others. And maybe some, will then get some perks out of this, but nothing large, nothing big. You don't find back then a big differentiation in treatment. Now, if you move forward a little bit and say 2020, when it was possible to fly without mask, you had these types of situation where you could, and we all know that, you could see in the back some customers with probably a weak customer lifetime value, a low one, and some others in the front enjoying fantastic perks because they may have a stronger customer lifetime value, obviously. So this growing difference in the way customers are being measured, in the way their lifetime values is going to be predicted, is a major phenomenon in marketing, and it might make sense from a monetary perspective. Maybe obviously some customer is worth 10 times more than the other one, but I think marketers all need to think about the perception of customers towards this difference in treatment. And we need more studies on that matter, definitely. Maybe sometimes some companies might have gone too far in the differentiation of their service levels. And more importantly, be careful, because are we really sure that we have the most valuable person in the front? That should be an obsession for airlines and all service companies. What if there was an influencer in the back of the plane? That person could have a very low monetary value from a pure cash flow perspective. But if you take into account other factors and the influence of that person, maybe, Dorothée, you might get to another hierarchy.
Yeah, indeed. We have discussed so far the value of direct financial contribution, but there is a lot of work being done on the engagement value, which invites us to consider the value of a customer in a broader sense, which doesn't necessarily translate into direct financial value. A customer brings to the relationship much more than a series of transactions. It brings a series of behavior that can generate value, like an influence value, what we call CIV, a referral value or sponsorship value, CRV, and feedback value, CKV. We can see that the digital channels are increasingly used and understood by companies. They use them in an intelligent way to make customer value even stronger, even easier to express, and involve customer. Kumar, a researcher passionate about this topic, called this the CEV, so the customer engagement value. So the pure LTV could be reductive. So now we'll focus on the second stream of thought and how we use customer value as a driver of growth. Thibaut, if you can tell us more on that second stream of school called the brand modeler.
Yes, absolutely. Because after studying customers, actually researchers started thinking about brand level modeling. Because again, sometimes you don't have all the individual transactions. And so brands play a major role, and they have a data of their own that had to be studied. And this is what Andrew Ehrenberg did. He's famous for saying your customers are the customers of other brands who occasionally buy from you. So this is quite provocative, obviously. And Andrew Ehrenberg, he has a special profile in the field of academia in marketing. He doesn't like at all the idea of modeling where he starts with hypothesis and you come to a deduction. He thinks this tortures kind of the data to fit into the hypothesis and to create a theory. Andrew Ehrenberg thinks very differently. He loves to replicate things. So he loves to look at experiments and results in thousands of them, and then come up with an analysis, a vision, and something has to emerge out of this. And so one of the things he studied is actually the brands with lower market shares in retail environments. And he noticed that those brands not only had low levels of purchasers, but they'd also had low levels of loyalty among those purchasers. So, in other words, less popular brands have the double jeopardy effects, meaning that they have fewer buyers, and those buyers do have a lower loyalty compared to popular brands. So this is the double gains, the law of double gains for the most popular brands, and this is obviously the double jeopardy effects. So this is the main finding of Ehrenberg, which is extremely valuable. So if we look at how he did it, he used the Dirichlet models, which is a major contribution to understand buyers' behavior. Basically, he looked at the penetration of a brand, so the proportion of buyers, and the average frequency of these buyers. And again, he could predict based on market share and one of those two variables, the other one. If we move on a little bit, we come to Byron Sharp after Ehrenberg. He basically did research and walked into Ehrenberg's footsteps and brought a lot of contribution to the field of customer lifetime value. And he liked to challenge things again. In his view, Byron Sharp, is that too many companies target the heaviest customers of a brand. And those buyers, the heavy buyers, they are targeted over and over with a great number of brands competing for their attention and their habits of those specific people. So marketers should not definitely, according to Byron Sharp, forget mass marketing. They should try to also differentiate in targeting sometimes the small buyers, which may be less targeted, less often, but who can have very repeat purchases over the years and maybe significantly contribute to the volume of sales because there are so many of them. So this is the main view brought by Byron Sharp. And now we can move on to the third school of thought that we wanted to present today. It is another way of thinking. It's the Uplift modeling school. It's this idea that customer lifetime value should be connected to marketing investment. And so we're going to look, Lucy May, at how this can actually be modeled.
Yes, thank you, Thibault. Indeed, this third and last school of thought we wanted to take you through is called incrementality. When it comes to customer value, this is probably the one where research is ahead of marketing practice. And it's for sure a strategic notion brought by researchers from Stanford University like Radcliffe or Kashner. It's also known as the Uplift modeling, which Dorothy mentioned at the beginning of this webinar. You're looking at the additional value that is created. Precisely, the idea is to find causality between a marketing treatment or action on an individual and positive impact on the value of a customer. In other words, a result, a positive behavior like a purchase from that individual, for example. It is comparing the behaviors of customers who are indeed targeted with marketing actions with those who aren't. And that allows you to identify strategic customers to develop value, customers who react positively when they are targeted and who would not have purchased if you hadn't targeted them. Incrementality is a causal impact approach on customer value. According to a test and a control analysis, it's a profitability of favorable reaction compared to natural profitability of conversion. Incrementality is an approach that allows investments to be reallocated to customers that are responsive if and only if they are indeed targeted. So that allows you to reconcile short-term, in other words, actions, marketing treatments, campaigns, and the long-term, lifetime value, frequency, retention. But it also reconciles the different marketing objectives because we can measure an uplift in awareness, in satisfaction, in retention, and so on. Incrementality is a very powerful tool. Now, Thibault, how do we actually measure incrementality?
Well, we just have a quick example here, and basically, when we want to measure incrementality, we will have a test and a control group. They both need to be randomized, so they're exactly the same. It's just the treatment which is going to be different. On the test group, you might test, for instance, here, the sending of an SMS and an email. And on the control, you might only send an email here. And you would look at the impact on conversion rate, for instance, over the days by comparing those two groups, so that you are perfectly sure that the only difference between those two groups is the SMS which was sent to the test group.
Good, absolutely, Thibault. The research on this is rather ahead, and we see it especially on the digital channel, where it's extremely important subject. So before taking your question, and don't hesitate to ask some, let's conclude this marketing reboot. So we have the definition of customer lifetime value. It's an exchange value that is both perceived and carried by the customer estimated revenue. We have seen its capacity to have a direct with the LTV, but also indirect contribution if we value the engagement. We have also seen the different ways of measuring the customer value with value segment, score like RFM, cash flow prediction, and then, of course, the measurement of uplift and incrementality. So what is the purpose of the notion of customer value? It's already used to identify profitable and non-profitable customers. In marketing, this identification is crucial to differentiate marketing action and treatment, maximizing the effectiveness of targeting, and then combining relational logic and presence in mind logic. And finally, incrementality, the most successful model at reconciling its objective with different horizons. So let's move on to the question. Don't hesitate to ask more in the minute we have left.
Yes, Dorothée, I think we have a first question, which is how to make sure that my experiments and my uplifts are unbiased. So this is a great question, and experiments are definitely a best-in-class methodology for test and learn. It's, for instance, a great way to test the optimal combinations for targets and treatments to impact CLV. So this takes quite significant know-how and skills in your teams to design experiments without bias. You want to have randomization among the populations, and you want to make sure that You exactly know which stimulus you send to which group. You want to make sure that you're going to have enough people in each group to draw robust conclusions. You want to make sure that you avoid selection bias, seasonality bias, activity bias. So there's a lot, obviously, and we don't have much time, unfortunately, but the most common issue is the selection bias. So sometimes the control group is not perfectly comparable to the test group, and that brings a lot of issues. And I think also that's why you need third parties to measure this, because you don't want the same company to maybe, let's say, sell your media, sell you some media on their inventory, and also measure the impact because of those biases I mentioned. So sometimes you want those companies to be challenged by a third party, if you see what I mean. Good.
Thank you, Thibault. I think we have another question. Should I favor the brand approach or the consumer approach?
Mm-hmm. The brand approach or the consumer approach? Yeah, I mean, if we all remember what Dorothée explained us before, we have those three schools of thought. And so the first one is focused and centered around the customer with Peter Fader and others. The second one around brands with Aaron Berg and Byron Sharp. Actually, they're very different and very complementary methods. So I'm going to say that you need both, but I think it's important to have both. If you just look at brands, you can predict, as Aaron Beck showed, a lot of things, and this is very valuable. And so if you but if you want to do precision marketing, if you want to target precisely, if you want to address the limitations identified by Byron Sharp, for instance, to not only focus on the heavy buyers, but also on the smaller buyers, then you need the first approach. Then you need to be able to precisely target those people, which means first identify their value, compute it, build the pyramid of value of your customers, and then target those only the people you want the way you want. And by the way, we can now do things so address precisely customers that we couldn't do before just a couple of years ago. It is fantastic. If you look at recent developments in technology with clean rooms and those environments opened by some retailers, you can do things that are just fantastic in the way you target and in the way you measure. Thank you for all those questions. I'm afraid we kind of run out of time. So maybe we could just show you our next upcoming events. We have a fantastic agenda ahead with Amélie de la Masselière, Global Online Marketing Director from Lacoste. She will be with us on Tuesday, September 22nd. So we'll send you the invite. Then a couple of days later, actually, October 14th, we'll have Paddy. Paddy is a fantastic professor in marketing at INSEAD in Singapore. He will present his latest book that hasn't even actually been published yet. It will be published a week after our session together, and it's called the Phoenix Encounter Method. And last, we will have another reboot. It's all in English, by the way, another reboot on the optimal frequency to address customers. So great topics ahead. Thank you so much, all of you. And thank you, Dorothée and Lucy May, for being with us today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.